Do you like MMOs? Do you like RPGs? Did you feel a little robbed by Sword Art Online? Do you want to see the greatest glow-up since Neville Longbottom? Well, then Solo Leveling's the story for you. Originally a web novel written by Chu Gong in 2016, it was later serialized and drawn by the artists Ki Seo-ryung and Jang Sung-rak. This is the only time in the video I'm going to apologize for how badly I'm pronouncing these names. We'll get over it. Let's move on. It covers a relatively simple but pretty interesting concept. Definitely not the first to do it, but I really like how it's been done. People have called it a reverse or an inverse isekai, but the idea basically being that you're not trapped in another world. The other world is trapped in here with you. Rather than the protagonist dying and going off elsewhere, the monsters come to us. So what's the premise of the story? Well, several years ago, some event happened that caused a portion of humanity to be awakened. Capital A, awakened. They then came into powers that allowed them to become heroes, or hunters, as they're referred to in the manhwa. Now, with different abilities and a sliding scale of strength, these hunters were put into ranks. The rarest and strongest being S-class, then the venerable A-class, powerful B-class, the often slept on C-class, the toxic as fuck D-class, and really quick, like, when you read this, or if you've read this, I don't know if you'll agree, every D-class that isn't like good friends with the hero are all just douchebag. Like, my best way of describing them is, all of the D-class that I come across in the webtoon are like, they're the people who would link damage meters after every boss in a dungeon or raid. Those people. That's what D-class are, just to give you a window into them. And last but not least, the often shat upon E-class. There are also hunters who don't quite fit that ranking. Hunters so powerful that they have a little mini ranking of their own above S-class, the national level hunters. These are people whose powers are so great that they rival the entire power of nations. Thankfully, there's only 5 of those that we're aware of, and they don't really come in until later in the story. Suffice to say, the power scaling's pretty off the fucking rails. A key point to remember for the story is once you have awakened, that's it. That's your power level. You're set in stone. Except for some very, very, very niche cases. So throughout the world, these gates begin spawning. They're entrances to dungeons filled with monsters, beasties, and all manner of enemies. Essentially just bad news. The difficulty of these gates match the ranking of heroes, from S rank being the, again, rarest and most dangerous dungeons, all the way down to E rank dungeons, which are pretty meh. The important thing to remember with these gates is they only close after they've been cleared and the boss has been defeated. If that doesn't happen within 7 days, the gate opens and the monsters inside are now allowed to roam free on our end. And since normal regular people still exist in this world, it would be pretty shitty if they do get out. And it has happened in the past that they have gotten out. And not just smaller gates, there have been S-class outbreaks. Almost world-ending stuff. So it's pretty important for hunters to stay on top of getting these gates closed, which led to the formation of the Hunters Association, which controls and regulates hunters as best they can, to keep an eye out for these gates so they don't miss any, and to ensure the gates then get closed before that 7-day mark pops up. And with the formation of an association, a regulating body surrounding something, so comes careers. And becoming a hunter isn't a bad career option if you're strong enough. It's a pretty good way to bring in a nice bit of moolah, you know, a little bit of that bread, if you're strong enough. And sadly, that's not the case for our main character, Sung Jin-woo, or just Jin-woo. An E-rank hunter, often referred to by others as the world's weakest hunter. Bear in mind, this is set in Korea. He's not just Korea's weakest hunter, they call him the world's weakest hunter. That's gotta hurt. And he hears them too. That sucks, dude. He doesn't even want to be a hunter, but he doesn't have any marketable skills for everyday life, and he is awakened, as much as that counts for being the weakest hunter in the world. So he tags along on lots of dungeon runs, gets injured pretty frequently, gets scuffed up, but he manages to make ends meet. His mom is sick with something called the sleeping sickness. It's a thing that came around when people started to be awakened as well. People just get real tired one day and then they fall asleep, and Sleeping Beauty style are in a slumber. So he's got to pay her medical bills, he's got to look after his sister, he's got to pay them bills. So the lower ranked hunters in the association are pretty used to carrying him in dungeon runs. But the admirable thing is, he persists. He's got the strength to go on, even when he really doesn't want to. And so at the beginning of the story, we find Jin-woo and a raiding party getting ready to tackle a D-class dungeon. It's not a big raiding party, it's a few people, 17 of them, ranging from E-class hunters to one singular B-class hunter. So it seems like it's going to be a pretty easy job. They clear the dungeon pretty handily, dispatch what they think is the boss, before they realize that they find themselves in a very, very rare kind of dungeon, a double layer. A dungeon within a dungeon. A donut disguised as a donut hole inside of another donut's hole. Common practice would be pull back, alert the association, and get some other hunters involved, because they have no way of knowing how powerful the rest of this dungeon is. But The raid leader gets a bit greedy, since he's aware involving more hunters means that the profits get divvied up even further. Their profits are going to dwindle. So he puts it to a vote. 8 decide to stay and carry on, 8 decide to go, with the deciding vote being Jinwoo. And since he's really hard up for cash and didn't make much out of this dungeon so far, he decides to carry on, which will prove fatal for almost all of them. They eventually find themselves trapped in a room surrounded by statues, which turn out to be S-rank monsters, and without going detail by detail, the room itself is a puzzle room, and Jinwoo is the only one who manages to figure out the rules by which they can survive. But not before 11 of the 17 party members are brutally dispatched, as well as 3 of them, including Jinwoo, being grievously wounded. The last part of the puzzle requires all of the hunters to stay around a pedestal in the center of the room while a timer ticks down, the door wide open in front of them, almost begging them to run through to safety. They're required to show their faith by sticking it out and waiting. The problem is, all the statues in the room are now slowly making their way towards them to murder the shit out of them. However, Weeping Angel style, as long as there's enough people to keep eyes on these statues, they won't move. But they don't do that. One by one, the remaining hunters bail the fuck out, leaving Jinwoo on his own to die. Jinwoo, being a little badass, decides, no, I'm not gonna go down, I'm gonna go down swinging. He picks up a sword, points it at one of the S-class enemies, and immediately gets shanked. Bashed down onto this plinth, and as he begins to breathe his last, the final flame on the timer goes out, and he's rewarded. A pop-up window from the system, capital T, capital S, lets him know that he's completed the requirements for the hidden quest, Courage of the Weak, and for this, he's offered the opportunity to awaken as a player. He's then given 0.2 seconds to make his decision, and like most of us, decides, yeah, okay, I'll do that, and he snaps awake on a hospital bed. Seemingly unscathed, but still kind of out of it, he's questioned by 2 people from the Hunters Association. Apparently they went into the dungeon, found him there, passed out, on the plinth, no statues, no nothing, and they of course extracted him and got him safe. But they make him aware of a phenomenon called double awakening. Very, very rare cases where a hunter who already has their pre-established power level awakens again and sees a huge Super Saiyan level bump in their power level and ranking. So they run a little test and see, no, he is still in fact weak as shit. They say their goodbyes and bounce, leaving Jinwoo to stare at a pop-up window that's still there, asking him to accept a daily quest. And if you've played any MMOs, you know pretty much all daily quests kind of suck. The rewards can be good, but doing them sucks. And his dailies are no exception. He has to do 100 push-ups, 100 squats, 100 sit-ups, 100 crunches, and he has to run 10 kilometers. Every single day. This is some One Punch Man shit. But since he's in hospital, he's tired, he's got to recover, so he decides, you know, I'm gonna go to sleep. I'm gonna take a little rest, and I'm gonna do this when I wake up. And the timer runs out, and he is transported to the penalty zone. Because he didn't complete his dailies, he now has to deal with the penalty. The system flings him into fucking Arrakis, I guess, and he's chased by a giant sand centipede for 4 hours, somehow miraculously surviving. He is then thrown back in and is rewarded for completing the penalty, and then he passes the fuck out. Making the very smart decision to not have that happen again, he starts doing his daily quests. And they have plenty of rewards. Stat boosts, stamina boosts. My favorite one being that after he completes all those daily quests, he can just decide, oh yeah, I'll just hit this little button, and my fatigue is gone. Like, if you were like, hey, if you run 10 kilometers, you get to keep all of the benefits of doing it and none of the fatigue, I do that shit every day. That's like the best life hack. And after leveling up a little bit, he starts gaining access to secret side dungeons. And this is my bread and butter. I love this. I'm on my 5th or 6th playthrough of Elden Ring right now. The ability to knock around and do some more difficult side quests before taking on the main game is my favorite thing about RPGs. There's nothing more satisfying for me than just working away for 4 hours while I level up my character before I even get to Margit, and then just stomping his ass. And that's basically the premise of solo leveling. Jinwoo starts going through all these secret side dungeons, he starts leveling up, fighting some seriously difficult monsters, barely scraping through by the skin of his teeth. The amount of times this kid ends up on death's door is astounding. Which makes it all the more satisfying when, after doing all these side dungeons, he goes and just solos normal gates. And people are like, what the fuck? Did you see? That's the world's weakest hunter. That's Jinwoo, right? That's that weak sauce boy who let that soft boy into the dungeon on his own. And then he just clears it, comes out, boom, done. And we begin to veer into the ridiculous power fantasy section of the story. And I don't even care because it is so well earned. You see everything this dude goes through, and seeing him go through all of that and then one-shot bosses later is so satisfying. It's almost as satisfying as when you do that in a game yourself. And anyone who plays RPGs knows the joy of like tackling all the side quests in an area and coming at the bosses with the best items and best stats you can come at them with, the joy of that is unparalleled. Which makes this better than 90% of other isekai out there. Because rather than just being, oh yeah, they're great because they're the main character. They're just powerful because they can do all of the things because they can do them. So there. We all know what I'm talking about. You actually see Jinwoo go step by step from being an adorable little floofy-haired soft boy to being an absolutely yoked 6'10" badass with one of the coolest haircuts I've ever seen in my goddamn life. There's fully a chapter where he's like, I look pretty cool now. I should probably get a haircut and clothes that make me look even cooler. Like, that's fully how his mind works. And I love it. And as time goes on, he does start to level up on his own, gaining more and more experience, as well as more OP as hell abilities. The most important being the ability to take the souls of enemies he's beaten and put them into a shadow army that he can summon. And the stronger he gets, the more soldiers he can have in his shadow army, and the stronger the enemies that he can add to that shadow army. To the point where he has essentially Knight Artorias and a fucking dragon in his army. It's then slowly revealed that there may be more to this whole awakening thing. He seems to be the only person who can consistently get stronger. Everyone else has been either awakened super strong or double awakened to make them A or S class. And from here we're kind of getting into spoilers, so just so you know, stop here. But he makes a bunch of friends, he makes more enemies, plenty of enemies. He makes his own guild because he starts getting in trouble with the Hunters Association for soloing gates that should be done by other guilds, like established within the regulatory body. He's like, all right, fine. My rich friend who I saved in this gate earlier, he's gonna finance a guild for me. What are you gonna do about it? And he starts making allies. It's really cool to see how the stronger he gets and more determined he is, people begin to just coalesce around his power, and good stuff starts to happen. Bad stuff also. For instance, an S-class gate break that is an entire arc in and of itself that is so goddamn cool sees other hunters from other parts of the world join in. We also get our first glance of national level hunters who are like, fuck it, I want to do this. Because they think they're great, and they are great, but not that great. And once again, we see Jinwoo come in and just no diff, completely solo the fucking boss in that area. Again, just super goddamn cool. And of course, he adds the boss to his ranks, because why not? He does eventually even end up getting in a fight with a national level hunter, but by this point, he's so strong that, again, no diff, L+ ratio, completely solos the guy. Hardly even breaks a sweat. So at this point, it's pretty evident that Jinwoo is someone to keep an eye on, and everyone has their eyes on him. Like I said, it starts to come to light that maybe all of this power awakening stuff wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't just a thing that happened. That there might be something behind it all pulling the strings when it's revealed that Jinwoo is becoming something called a monarch. We're made aware of the existence of other monarchs. We see that the system that controls Jinwoo's leveling up and his power as a player within this system might be manipulated by some higher being or beings. And the more we find out about that, the clearer it becomes that there is a war coming. Something big is going to happen. And Jinwoo is just a small part of it. A very powerful part, but a small part of it nonetheless. And that he and the allies he's made along the way, becoming the most powerful fucker in existence, will be very, very important for tackling what's to come and ensuring that humanity does not get absolutely destroyed. That's as far as I'm going to go with details. If you like the sound of it, go and read it. If you've already read it, let me know in the comments what you thought of it, because I'm interested to see. There is, like I said, a novel and a manhwa, and there are different endings for both of those. So if you've only read one, read the other. I think you'll be interested to see the differences. And if you haven't read either one, go and read them. Pop back into the comments, let me know what you thought. I had to reread it for the video, and I really enjoyed it to the point where I'm going to reread it again when I'm finished. It's just really fun. It's one of those power fantasies that really does it for me, because every fucking thing that Jinwoo does is earned. And I really, really like that. And if you're not one for reading things, you're in luck, because an anime was announced last year for this year. A1 Pictures, the studio behind Sword Art Online, is making it, and say what you will about SAO, the visuals are crisp, and the music is being done by Hiroyuki Sawano. If you don't know that name, go and Google him. Look him up, just look up Sawano Drop. You won't be disappointed. Be hype as fuck. You've definitely heard his music. If you've watched anime in the last 5 years, you've heard his music. So the anime is sizing up to be incredible. I cannot wait to see what this looks like. I will be watching it day one when it drops. I already know there's controversy about it. I don't fucking care. I'm gonna watch it and develop my opinion on it then. But if it sucks, we'll always have the manhwa. I might do a video on the anime once it drops, depending on how different it is or how good it looks, because God, I hope it looks good. But I'm going to stop myself there because I could go on about this for ages. I really, really enjoy this story. If you like isekai stuff, I've got another video coming later this week about Hero Has Returned, which is one of the roughest isekai stories or anti-isekai stories that I've come across. Think of The Boys crossed with an isekai. That's the kind of thing we're talking about here. So keep an eye out for that. If you want to see it, hit subscribe. That'll be coming later this week. If you like the video or you like what I'm doing, hit the like button to let me know. Let me know if you have any recommendations for anime or manga similar to this that you think I should be reading, because I love power fantasy stuff. It's just chef's kiss. And if you want some more off-the-cuff stuff outside of the regular videos, I stream every Friday and Saturday on Twitch, 6 p.m. GMT on Friday and 11 a.m. GMT on Saturday. Around that time, we play fast and loose. My TikTok is in the description for just stupid, goofy stuff that I do. It's fun. I like it. And if you're in the mood for another video about manga, I did one last week that you can see. It'll be somewhere around here, about the most terrifying and upsetting manga I've ever read. Caution before you go watch it. It's pretty fucked up, but it's really, really good. Anyway, with all that said, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.